Will you pray with me? God, who shows us the way toward glorious diversity, lead us in your path today. Amen. There has been a lot of political fuss made over the last couple years over a growing awareness of our intersex, transgender, non-binary, and gender-fluid siblings. And I say growing awareness because these folks who exist on the fluid end of between and both have always been with us. Politicians are using kids in sports, leveraging what they perceive to be a wedge issue of trans athletes to their benefit. A huge kerfluffle has been fabricated over bathroom usage, turning a basic human need into a political battleground. In some states, youth are prohibited from changing pronouns or name without explicit parental permission. And these laws, which purport to back up parental authority, then turn around and undermine it by issuing terrifying laws that criminalize parents who pursue gender-affirming care for their children. Taking it to an extreme, Florida has criminalized even talking about LGBTQIA+ issues with their Don't Say Gay laws. Our national UCC officers summed this up in a statement saying, the well-being of transgender and non-binary youth is being debated across legislative sessions across the United States. As of March 3rd, there have been 385 anti-LGBTQ+ bills introduced, with 108 of those bills aiming to end gender-affirming health care for trans and non-binary youth. This places more than 54,000 trans youth actively taking life-saving, gender-affirming medical care at risk. This is the highest number of anti-LGBTQ bills ever introduced in a single legislative session. What are we so afraid of? The assumption that male and female come together into a unit of two runs deep in our society, even within communities like ours that are open and affirming. It's hard to move beyond the assumption that being straight is the norm. Kids on the sexuality spectrum, gay and lesbian and bisexual youth, kids who are asexual or aromantic or polyamorous, they have to wade through dense heteronormative culture in which being heterosexual is the assumed and reinforced norm. They navigate it in work, in relationships, in movies, in love stories, in faith communities. They have to wade through all of that, mostly alone, in order to find their way to themselves. Youth who are gender nonconforming, who are trans or non-binary or gender fluid, have to wrestle hard to figure out who they are in this societal context, to discern how and who God created them to be. Rather than resting on the easy assumptions of girl or boy, the categories of feminine or masculine, rather than just dealing with the already difficult work of growing up and developing themselves within a boundaried social construct of gender, these incredible youth are throwing out the playbook and starting from scratch. I cannot imagine having developed my identity without the boundaries or the guardrails of gender. And yet these young people are forging ahead of us, creating new categories and understandings of how to be in the world. Categories that provide freedom and self-expression and health and joy. Their determination reminds me of Jacob, wrestling through the night. Now, Jacob is not exactly a perfect character. Jacob is the one who, through deception, takes the birthright blessing away from his older twin brother, Esau. After fleeing for his life, we find him in this moment returning to his ancestral home and his brother, a wealthy man with many children, and hoping that the 400 soldiers his brother has amassed will not meet him and his household in slaughter. So to be clear, we are not making a one-to-one comparison here between Jacob and gender-fluid youth. But regardless of these things, on this night, Jacob is alone when a mysterious being called man, early in our Genesis text from today, or God, later in the same Genesis text, and also in the story about this in Hosea, which also names this mysterious being as angel. So, lots of names, same being. Interesting aside. But this divine being and Jacob wrestle and wrestle throughout the night. Hour by hour, they continue their match, parting at times, gasping as they catch their breath, wary of the next round. When have you experienced a dark night of the soul like that, where you feel you are literally hand-in-hand combat with whatever force you are fighting, where you cannot stop until you succeed, where you have to draw back to catch your breath from time to time? The battle goes on for so long. I imagine the journey of our beloved gender-fluid siblings might be much like this, wrestling with themselves, with who they were taught they were intended to be, with society's demands and expectations on them, wrestling and wrestling through the night, all alone, determined not to give up, not to cede, knowing that their very survival depends on this match. As daybreak dawns, the encounter seems to be a draw. Jacob has not been vanquished. The mysterious being prepares to take their leave, but first, Jacob demands a blessing from the mysterious one. This nerve to demand a blessing after spending all night wrestling, panting and exhausted when they turn to finally leave, you demand a blessing. I see echoes of Alok's beautiful insistence on their own divinity in that clip that we watched, on their own irrecoverable sense of who they are, a sense of their own worthiness. And the divine being, God, blesses Jacob by giving him a new name. Jacob, now Israel, emerges from this ordeal blessed by God with a new name and goes on to be one of the patriarchs of 3 faiths. Perhaps this leadership was preordained, prophesied as his mother Rebekah understood. Or perhaps something happened to Jacob, Israel, in the struggle for his life. A struggle that the divine being acknowledged, saying, "For you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Perhaps there was something in this struggle that helped him see and understand his world in a way that others wanted to follow. Non-binary activist Alok talks about the ways in which being gender nonconforming is not something they are in need help of, but rather a gift to us, a gift that can free us if only we have eyes and heart and healing to receive it. They have wrestled through the long night for the blessing of a new name, a new understanding of their gender identity and pronouns for an expanded, broken open sense of gender. Rather than being a victim who needs our pitying and protection, they fiercely claim their own belovedness, their own divinity, and they beckon us toward the freedom that they have found. I want that freedom that Alok has found for myself. I want it for every one of you. I want it for all who desire it, all who wish to disentangle themselves from the strangulation of gender policing and norms. I want it for all who desire it, space to bloom and grow and find their way to self-expression that exists beyond the binary. I want for each of us the blessing that God offers us, the blessing that we receive after wrestling with our sense of who we are, of who we are called to be. I want us as a church, as a society, to honor those who have come through this, for us to recognize that in their trials, in their profound searching, they have glimpsed God's face, for they have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed. Perhaps, just perhaps, they have something to tell us about who God is. Called by name, blessed by God. Let us in our human-to-human actions do the same. May we not only fight for the rights and dignity of our gender nonconforming siblings, but may we seek to learn from them about what they have glimpsed and what they have to teach us about the divine.